Half a day, namaste, and thank you for tuning in today, Guahan and beyond. I'm Claire Calvo, and this is Conscious Living. So this is our third show, and when we think of the word conscious living, the title of the show, it is by definition just that, right? Living consciously, bringing awareness to how we live our lives. And we focused on things, along with holistic health and wellness, like nutrition, conscious eating, yoga, conscious breathing. And today we're going to talk about something a little different, but intrinsically connected. We're talking about conscious spending. We're talking about money. And I think a lot of people don't really, when they think money, they don't really consider the ramifications and the connection to health and to wellness. And the reason why I thought it was important that we talk about this is because the number one stressor in America is money. It was ranked higher than family, relationships, work. And let me just share with you some statistics that I found. Of course, there was a lot of different sources, but the American Psychological Association poll found that money is the leading cause of stress. A survey that's been going since 2007 found that money remains the number one stressor regardless of the economic climate. Credit card debt hit a record high last year, more than $1 trillion, and this was according to Federal Reserve. Student loan debt jumped 150% in the last decade, and of course, even according to BlackRock, which is an American investment management corporation, found that the number one cause of stress is money, ranking higher, like I said, than health, family, relationships, and work. So I have someone here today who has such an extensive background in both health and wellness, fitness, as well as investment, finance, and wealth. Yeah, did I say health and wealth? So we're gonna, before I introduce her though, I just want to share with you tell you a little bit about her. She is a San Francisco-based strategic advisor to and investor in early-stage wellness businesses. She began her career at Goldman Sachs in investment banking, advising on growth opportunities for Fortune 500 companies, fundraising, mergers and acquisitions, or public offerings for the likes of Coty, BCBG, Dunkin' Brands, Yum Brands, along with many others. She graduated with distinction from Duke University with a bachelor's in economics and certifications in markets and management and Spanish. And she's worked directly with the president of Equinox on investing in wellness technologies and brands, the founders of One Medical Group and Octave Health on health initiatives and changing the role of healthcare for everyday Americans, and the founders of Sundial Brands on the go-to-market strategy, long-term planning, and selling a stake to Bain Capital. She has led investments in and played the role of a board advisor at various consumer companies, including Well People, Credo Beauty, Smith Teamaker, Alter Ego, Cameo, High Beauty, Paradox, and GEM Vitamins, among others. It is my honor to introduce to you Julia Garces French.
Thank you.
Half a day, Julia.
Half a day. Thanks for having me.
That's such an impressive bio. And of course, half of it I'm like, wow. See, the whole conversation and topic around investments and business, It's always been kind of intimidating for me. But just considering how important it is to have that knowledge, or just, a little bit, just the basics of information is important for everyone to have.
Yeah, it's the new wave of awareness, I feel like, of people taking control of their finances, and new literature and information about how to do it with your own interests in mind, sustainable investments, or,
right.
And
of course, I mean, now, we talk about health and wellness, holistic health and wellness, and how important it is to, they found, I mean, obviously it connects, it corresponds that poor financial health leads to poor physical health. I mean, they definitely see how if you don't really invest the time and energy into your health, and vice versa, how it can kind of affect one another. So I'm just curious though, tell us a little about you, and like what steered you in this direction of, well, finance, of course, but was it your intention to lean more into like health and wellness businesses and companies?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been very interested in numbers, and I remember a very critical course in high school where we learned about microfinance and about the way you could use economics to change a whole economy. You know, invest a little bit, and what that little amount can do for a woman who then can go and work or invest, you know, buy a cow and you know, raise up a whole community when you have investing in good people. And so I kind of went to work focused on that, to be honest. It's so funny that I ended up at Goldman Sachs, which is kind of the exact opposite of microfinance. But I wanted a really good, strong understanding, and I felt like that's the gold standard of where you learn about investments, about business. And so that's why I went there. I always felt like, well, there's a couple things. One, we were talking earlier about how if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And so I really find it so interesting, the little things that take and move a company. And so I tell people, clients all the time, I learn about someone's business by looking at their numbers, their financials. So I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a good year, this is where the margin improved, this is where you got a new customer who's paying you more. I tell, it's like a novel for me when I look at financial statements.
And of course for me it's like, because on that note, what you find your joy and your pleasure and what interests you was the opposite for me.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, how would you get someone excited, like for me, numbers are just like, I always want to be like, okay, find someone, you know, can I pay you to like handle this for me? Because just knowing, and I kind of already resigned myself for even wanting to like look into it. And even though, you know, I graduated with like a business minor, but even still, it was like after the degree I decided to open my own business. I stuck to, like how you said, when it's something you're passionate about, you don't consider it work. So, you know, I kind of opened with the notion of, okay, I love this, I'm passionate about it, let me just throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. And luckily, you know, with the time it was with me and my partner Rollin at the time, and luckily we had a small but very strong, loyal clientele, and then it grew. But what can you advise for those of us who are not very business savvy, or, you know, I mean, our interest in like numbers and just like what would you suggest for us to just at least be able to manage our finances?
Yeah, definitely. I would say first that you're in the majority probably. For me, I work so well with creative genius, I'd say. I am not creative, so you know, figure out what it is that you want to do, and I will, from a financial basis, show you the way of how to get it done. I also think it's really important to have like a partner who does understand finance. But what in the investment world, we always are looking for a management team where like there is a leader who knows their strengths so well and is very self-aware and willing to give finance or marketing or one area of the business very important to an expert in that. That is one of the top things we'll look for in a founder who we want to invest in. So, you know, knowing that you can't do it all is actually one of the most important things to recognize. And then having a trusted partner. I mean, there's a couple, in terms of what I'd recommend, I think it's really interesting to look at what the big, you know, for you, like what are companies that have public numbers out there, and read, you know, they have annual reports and they talk to their shareholders, because shareholders are not necessarily meant to be finance experts. So when Equinox is talking to their public shareholder, or, you know, their debt holders, they are trying to do it in the most aesthetically pleasing way with charts and whatnot, and and then, you know, for your type of business, what are the most important numbers to hone in on? It's probably only like 5 numbers that you got to keep track of, and the rest of them, you know, the accountant can package and are helpful for taxes and whatnot, but it's helpful things that you want to stay focused on from your operational perspective.
Okay, great. Yeah, because you mentioning that, I mean, it worked out beautifully, because I have 2 partners now, and one of them, Judy, she's like a whiz when it comes to the numbers, so it's great to have that balance, you know, between her, Lily, and myself. But we were talking earlier also about balance.
Yeah.
And you mentioned right now about being conscientious about where you invest.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to focus not just investing your money, but investing your time. Because you said, and into the education.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It helps, rather than, especially now with social media, it's like, if you have so many hours in a day, it's like, okay, I have so much time. Am I going to spend it on this? Looking through people's hop a day, Eli? No, we're rolling. So we're talking about financial wellness, but are you going to invest that time, scrolling through, posts, or are you going to invest it in listening to a podcast about whatever you're passionate about and how you could emulate what that person is sharing?
Yeah.
So it's a great, that's a great advice coming from you. So, can you just take us through your daily regimen as far as with wellness? Because now you've applied so much of this into your own life.
Yeah.
You've worked with a lot of these companies, and I just want to say, amazing that you're sitting on the table and part of the acquisition of SoulCycle from Equinox. First, I just want to hear a little bit about that first.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so cool when you, in general, meeting founders lights me up. Meeting founders and helping them think through the next stages of their business, because you see this little seed, and you just like in a field, right? What it's going to look like a little bit when it grows up,
right?
But the excitement, the enthusiasm, you're right, numbers can get boring, and so when you talk to someone who has this new crazy idea that they are willing to walk through walls for, it is just that's why you wake up and do what you do for me.
Yeah.
And so for me, investing in, thinking about the founders of SoulCycle, or the food company that we invested in, a healthy eating company at Equinox, yoga company, an inexpensive fitness, $15 a month fitness company that we invested in.
Wow.
There's these things you think about, and it's really crazy to have this little spark of an idea, a little PowerPoint presentation of we think this will be a great idea, and then however many years down the line they launch the whole thing. SoulCycle files for their IPO. Peloton is now coming is the next wave that we thought about investing in, but we thought, who's really going to buy that?
Right.
So it's
oh my gosh, that's right.
Interesting to see these companies come through, meet the founders, and then it actually helps you improve as an investor, saying, oh, I missed this sign, diagnose, what did I miss? So it's pretty crazy. It's amazing to see people like Julia and Elizabeth follow their dreams, just find a loyal following, and then find an amazing partner in Equinox who helps them find the real estate, inexpensive real estate, drive with the marketing, and how protective they are of their customers, and see them do as successfully as they have.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, and like you're saying, all coming from a seed. And there's some quote, I might butcher it, but the seed does not even see what the tree it turns into. And just having just the strength of just planting something and not even knowing what you're going to grow to, but just the strength of coming through the soil and growing into that. It also reminds me of, have you heard of E.T., the hip-hop preacher?
No.
Eric Thomas? Okay, I think that's his name, my memory. But anyways, he was just talking about, he's a motivational speaker, and he was just talking about what is needed, the persistence and the passion when it comes to doing what you love to do. And no matter how many times, because you think of some of the people who have succeeded astronomically, and how many times they've been turned down. And it's just the persistence and drive, and you gotta want it so good, so bad, so good, that he brought up this story about this young man coming to a guru, and this guru was so successful, had everything he needed. And he said, I want to learn. I want to be like you. I want to be successful. The guru said, come back tomorrow, meet me at the beach at 4 o'clock in the morning. And this guy's like, the beach? He's like, I'm thinking we're going to go and you're going to teach me. We're going to sit down in an office or something. You teach me about your successes and how I could emulate it. He said, like I said, meet me at the beach 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. So he goes to the beach, meets him there, and he's like, and come out to the water. And, of course the guy's like, I didn't come here to swim. I want to learn how to be successful. So he kept reiterating that. And basically how the guru asked him to come out. First he was knee deep, then hip deep, then shoulder deep, and finally he got him all the way out and held his head underwater and held him down there where he was struggling. almost to the point of passing out. And finally let him up, and he was like, what? You know, he's like, are you crazy? And the guru said, that is how much you need to want it, as much as your next breath. And just explaining that when you're passionate about something to the point where you want it more than taking a nap, or you're wanting it, you know, it's got to be that fire within you. So I mean, that listening to that speech really just like lit me up.
Oh, definitely.
So I mean, and I think back to, well, anyways, we'll talk about that later. I want to know about you and just give us a daily, your typical regimen of the day.
Okay.
Like getting up, getting ready for work, and now, I'm sorry, now she is pregnant, she's expecting, and what month are you?
6.
Her 6th month.
Yeah.
So yeah, just what is your typical day?
Sure. I'll have some caveats because there are things I would like to be doing that I'm working on. Like right now, I actually try, and this has been for a long time, sleep is so important. When I was in investment banking, I remember I used to finish work at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., go, like I had a cousin nearby who I could just go sleep at her place for just 3 hours so I could get back into the office by 9 a.m., present to our clients and whatnot. And I remember how my face looked, my skin, and how I felt emotionally. And so since then, I've tried to make a really concerted effort that I have an alarm that sets off at 9 p.m. It's time to start getting ready to go to bed. I try to get a good, at least 8 hours of sleep every night. Wake up. What I'm trying to do is not look at my phone for the first few hours.
First few hours?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because,
I try to do it for the first hour, but that's
because
amazing.
So what my husband does is he will do a couple hundred push-ups, and it's just his way to like get his blood flowing, your mindset in the right place. And I really want to do that because sometimes when you look at your emails, sometimes you open it and then you're not going to deal with it there on the phone from bed anyways. So why stress yourself out immediately? Those urgent things are going to sit there until you sit at your computer and really deal with them.
That is a great point.
And so I got a Peloton, which I love. It's one of those bikes that you have at home, and it streams different classes. You can pick, what type of music genre, how long you want to work out, and whatnot. So I use my Peloton, go for a walk with my
I'm curious though, why would you prefer doing that than actually going to because you're an instructor at Equinox. I presume you have free membership.
I do have a free membership. It's so crazy. It's kind of back to your point about investment of my time. I have a limited amount of time in the morning. I want to hang out with my husband a little before he goes up to work. I want to take my dog for a walk. It's just so nice to be outside in that San Francisco air with the saltiness. And so for me, the Peloton is right there, and it's like a good 20-30 minute chunk. It's literally in and out. I don't have to get all the way to the gym. And so for me, it's just time allocation.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm curious, like, what would you say to the person out there who's like, okay, great, that sounds great, but I have, I'm a single mom, I have like 3 kids, and like, how can they still make it work?
Yeah.
Because nothing's impossible. You have to, right? Yeah. So you gotta want it enough to. So like, what would you recommend to someone who just basically says, I don't have time?
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to not. I to not come off preachy because I know I don't have a child yet, so things are about to get crazy. But a lot of it for me is like there are things I sacrifice. There's times where I feel like absolutely crappy, particularly in pregnancy, where I'm like, you know what, a 30-minute swim right now will just feel phenomenal. And it actually fuels the rest of the day where I have energy to do a ton more. I'm much more positive. So it's all about like also noticing your emotions, noticing how your body and your emotions react to you having made for yourself a 15-minute little segment where you're going to stand, instead of watching TV, you're going to bring your little weights in front of the TV. I pull up YouTube on my TV and do a prenatal workout, and it's not a ton of sweating, but I feel so good about having done something that was just for me, where I felt like no matter how many crazy things were thrown in my face for that day, and where I felt like I might have failed, for that 15 minutes, it was my time. I accomplished something, and I was already winning. So for me, it's beyond the like lose weight. It's a mentality.
And and I could attest to that, you know, now in my 40s. Before it was like, oh, I want to make sure I look good, and I just want to feel good.
Yeah.
And ironically, but not, it goes hand in hand. When you feel good, you glow, and you know, I feel like you look good, and a lot of it has to do with just getting the oxygen in, getting the blood flowing, and I like what you said about the mindset, because our beliefs truly shape our lives. And you know how they say, oh, well, this is so-and-so's personality. Well, that is your personal reality that you're creating by saying, oh, well, this is, and it's interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about something that has affected me since I was a kid. And because I've always, you know, we're also talking about our relationship to money. Yeah. And, you know, there's stigma, you know, when people hear about wealth or money, or, you know, the lack of, or the abundance of, already there's, you know, preconceived notions. And believe it or not, there was an incident that happened to me in the 3rd or 4th grade in a Catholic school. And I didn't realize until just recently how that affected my relationship with money. I was sick. I missed school for about a week. I was in the hospital. I had like a intestinal virus. Came back to school after a week, and of course the teacher didn't know. You know, I don't think, obviously when this happened, she didn't realize it yet. So I walked into the room, and in front of all my classmates, had me stand, or I was probably already standing, but in front of everyone, she said, do you think because your father is the governor and your family, who's, you know, whoever, you're special and you could miss school, an entire week of school? And I just remember as a little 8 or 9-year-old feeling like, immediately making the association. If you are politically known, if you are known to have any amount of wealth, you will be not unliked. So for me at an early age, it was kind of like I had a really strained relationship with money. And I saw how that through my years kind of always made me kind of shy away from it. And also when it came, you know, what came to business, when we first opened our business, I remember my partner at the time being like, Claire, this cannot be, we're a for-profit, we're a business. We can't just have donation classes all the time. And a part of me always felt guilty for charging people something. And it's interesting how I never really looked at it until more recently, a few years ago, where, you know, thank goodness I have partners who balance me off, because we were, actually even before that, even being asked to do a private course, like, oh, so how much do you charge? When I had to come up with my own price tag, it showed me, how much do you value yourself? How much do you value your time? How much do you value your certificates? And part of that is also, if you take time and energy, you know, because also that's the other thing people talk about, well, it's so expensive to get education or a certificate or whatever it is, but sometimes you got to put that extra, you got to set it aside and invest in yourself. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm glad that finally, you know, it took me like, what, 30-some, 40 years to come to a better relationship, to a better understanding of the energy of money. Yeah. And because, you know, I think also some people who grew up with hearing money doesn't grow on trees, money's the root of all evil. You know, if you allow that to affect your mind, and it's going to strain your relationship, and you're always going to be in that lack mode. Yes. And you're not going to feel deserving of it, or you're going to feel like, ooh, if I associate with it, then that means I'm one of them. Right. So it's really about cultivating a good relationship with money as well.
I remember when Sheryl Sandberg was speaking recently, or in the last few years, about the imposter syndrome, and when she defined what that was, it hit something in me, where it's like, there are certain rooms where no matter how many credentials you have, you sometimes just don't feel like you belong, or like you deserve to be in that room or at that table. Yeah. And throughout my entire career, having grown up in the States, I feel like, you know, in the finance world, 2% of investment dollars go to females. That's it.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
2% of investment dollars go to female founders.
Wow.
Yes. And there are only somewhere in that same range of, you know, less than 5% of the people making the decisions on investments are women.
So where you're sitting, like, give me an idea. Yeah. When you go into a board meeting, or you go into any, how many other females are in there sitting with you? Like at Goldman Sachs, for instance.
Rarely a single other female.
Wow.
So I remember, actually, I remember we were selling OPI. Do you know the nail polish company?
Yeah.
So we were looking at a company was looking at buying them. We were representing that company, and it was me and 11 old white men talking about this nail polish company, and I, of course, am the youngest one. I'm the one who does all the numbers, and them asking, okay, what's their competitive advantage? Why are they better than the competitor? And so meek little me, who has the imposter syndrome, doesn't feel like I should be speaking up, but I finally felt like I had footing. So I raised my hand and talk about it, because they're all saying, you know, my wife says this. I think this is how my wife thinks about these nail polishes. And so that's what I've loved about the consumer and the wellness space, is like, not only do I get to be this numbers person who I'm still the only woman in the room often.
Wow.
Which is also something that you have to learn how to speak when it's your turn, because you're representing a whole gender sometimes.
Right.
You're sometimes the only female in finance that they've ever worked with.
That's incredible.
It's crazy. And so finding my footing in an industry that I love has given me not only that numbers background where, you know, I could be like any other guy who does the same job, but I have such passion for wellness in general that it's been really fun to be the partner in that way.
Well, it's beautiful that you are doing something that bridges both. You know, you love your love for numbers and investments and whatnot, and also your love and passion for wellness. Yeah. And that's what I want to ask you next is, where do you see the trends? Because, you know, I mean, even here on Guam, you know, when we first started with Synergy, there was just like a handful of, you know, there was, of course, Paradise has been around for a while, and at the time Contend and Synergy, little old Synergy. And over the span of the past 15 years, they're booming everywhere, you know, CrossFit boxes and other yoga studios and just other fitness studios. Yeah. So you're in California, but I'm just curious overall, like nationally, like what kind of trends are you seeing?
Yeah. A couple things. So one is think about members who come loyally to a box or a gym or whatever. There's a special connection and you have a loyalty there, right? Those are people who are willing to invest in their health, who understand the value. Real estate companies are now seeing huge value in that. And so you're actually seeing, and this is very much the case of Equinox. Equinox is the anchor tenant. So they are a tenant who draws people to a certain mall or location that every other store next to it benefits from it, because those people who are willing to invest in things for themselves are coming every day.
Wow.
So you're seeing really interesting kind of real estate deals where these companies are all landing together. The new age of wellness land together with a smoothie shop, like a massage parlor. You have all, and that's you know, it's fun as a consumer, but it is interesting because there was in the last decade there's been this movement of e-commerce, right? You know, everyone's saying you buy things only online because it's so much cheaper, you don't pay for real estate. But you're actually seeing things move back to brick and mortar. And they're looking for anchor tenants like fitness to draw people back into the malls to shop and to be in the experience. You're also seeing experience being one of the next new, I guess, waves of investment where I feel like there's like a touch and feel you have with your customers in the gym, and it's online and offline in the digital space. And so
you're actually taking the class live. Right, online. Okay.
Yeah, and so you're seeing ways in which like your customers who are maybe off island for a month or deploy, you know, wherever they are, if you can still keep that connection with them in a digital way, it's a very worthwhile investment so that they still feel part of your loop. You can still continue to sell to them. And then the last thing I would say that is huge is that just that digital part of like. I remember thinking like no one's gonna invest in a Peloton, you know, $2,200 in a bike plus $20 a month for your streaming content.
And this was when in 2012.
12. Yeah. They just IPO'd. That company just went public. There are tons of people all over the world who are investing in their health in that way. And what that does is it allows a company like Peloton or like Equinox to then invest in their next wave of wellness, something that's less expensive, that gets to more people to fill the holes. And so that'll keep happening in wellness. And I'm excited to see, while you might need to, the first things that come out might be expensive, wait a few years and the next iterations will reach and be less expensive.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we're speaking specifically right now about the fitness aspect of wellness. We were talking earlier, though, that, of course, and another thing that's great about now with everything that is, you could get all the information and sometimes misinformation online, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's from podcasts or like, whatever. But aside from fitness, now we have so much information out there as far as nutritional, as far as we were talking also about the trend towards more of the mental emotional wellness. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So right now there's a ton of investment on artificial intelligence, right? So I'm fortunate in that I get to see in Silicon Valley, where there's so many startups coming through. Every bright idea, you kind of get to see their pitch of like the 20 pages of how they're going to build their business. It's so exciting. So from a nutrition perspective, could you imagine if you could take a picture of what you're going to eat, or and get feedback and have those logs with someone, and basically it's less expensive because it's not an actual person on the other end. It's like information that a nutritionist would need to know, logged in and telling you all the feedback about what your meal is and what you should consider for your next meal. That type of stuff is coming out, which is so cool.
Would you say the Bay Area is kind of the forefront of all of that kind of?
It definitely, from a software production and AI, it is. LA is interesting. They call it Silicon Beach now. It's like the next wave,
Santa Monica area.
Exactly. Santa Monica, Venice, the next wave of consumer. There's just a ton of interest, particularly in that wellness space. So there's a lot of investment. So there's new investors down there.
And this is actually also helping, the environment. I mean, you just think about like when you're making those conscious decisions, how it's eco-friendly. What is that car that's everywhere in California?
Tesla?
The Tesla.
Yeah.
Even just and just moving more towards that direction, healthy community, healthy environment, healthy. But getting back to the mental emotional wellness, can you share a little bit about that? Remember, you're saying that the trend of you're seeing that now there's more interest and more investment towards the
mental health.
Yeah, mental health.
So actually the biggest wave, when I talk to investors from the largest of funds, I'm saying, what's the thing you're most excited about that you've invested in recently? It's been in mental health, which is like, I know it's such an important place for us to personally be investing our money in and our time in, but to know that investors are seeing it as a financially very successful vertical that is just on the cusp of breaking. So imagine being able to, right now there's one called Talkspace. You can text a therapist at any time. You pay a monthly fee. You can text anytime. I'm having a really hard day. Like this happened. Talkspace.
Talkspace. Okay. And I think that's also because in certain areas of the world, it's still kind of taboo. To, like, people don't want to be like, oh, I'm open about it. I've seen counselors, but it's great that they have that because they have the anonymity. So, they're not actually going to someone's office and speaking face to face. Oh, that's great.
And companies are paying for it. Companies are recognizing that their employees are more stable. Companies are asking more and more of us every day. And that stress, you need, some people break. And so you need something that's like, not only for, the senior level, but all the way through. They are paying for that. And then there's also certain investment funds. Right now there's quite a lot of investment happening in general in Silicon Valley. So they're trying to differentiate themselves. And a lot of there's one particular fund that says, we will invest our money in you, take a portion of your company and help guide you. But we are also going to pay for an executive coach for the founder to make sure that in this very difficult, like the drowning story, a very difficult time of your life of building this business and putting everything else to the side, that you remain emotionally stable.
Absolutely. I mean, we're holistic beings, and that, of course, at the core of it is our mind, body, and spirit. And on that note, how are we on time? 10 minutes. All right. on that note, I'm sorry, that kind of lost my train of thought. But the emotional component is very important, and I feel like how you said companies are, we gotta value not just what we're selling, but the people who are making it happening, which are the employees. And having that, one more time, what is it called? The app of being able to Talkspace.
Yeah.
So is that something that's already available?
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
So having that, like the mental emotional component involved with wellness, have you seen, like, because you were in a very high stress job, probably still are to a certain degree, how do you deal with your stress?
Yeah.
Like financial stress as well as just daily life stress? I
would say my counterpoint is definitely on the fitness and health side.
Yeah.
I try to tune into how my body is reacting to different things. I've noticed that going on long walks in the morning, it's not, I go to sleep a little extra early, or I don't look at my phone for an extra half hour, and I have enough time to go outside with my dog, walk along the Golden Gate Bridge, beautiful, fresh air, helps me calm down and think. I've also found, as I mentioned, just like starting my day with a workout just makes me feel like I can achieve anything, and so I'm like ready for each new thing. I also just listened to a podcast. There's this man who came up with the acronym SAVERS. He talks about how he looked through what every successful CEO or founder has done and what they do to start their morning, and it's as simple as a 5-minute routine. And I'm not going to remember the whole acronym, but part of it has to do with journaling. And so, just taking literally 1 minute for journaling. What are the 3 things I'm grateful for today? What are the 3 things I'm going to accomplish today?
Yeah.
1 minute for silence. And he said, in any form, if it's prayer, going to church, or meditation, or yoga, something like that. The other one is exercise. And so, it's all these things that you kind of like, yeah, those all make sense. That'd be a really good way to start my day and to de-stress and break that, block of frustration. But knowing that it's all backed by science, like, of course, the data is there that's, it doesn't take very long, but it will help dissipate. Yeah.
And that's important to know, just because when you hear, like in the beginning of this podcast, sharing those numbers of just what stress does to us individually and as a community, just seeing on the rise with everything from drugs and suicides and whatnot. And it's important to remember that we all have value, and to place that value upon ourselves, and that means investing your time, investing your money in yourself, because you really can't, and especially for those who want to just help everyone else, you have to help yourself first.
Yeah.
And like you said, making sure you have something. Journaling, I definitely attest to. Journaling, and like you said, like in the beginning of the day, I do the same thing as far as prayer, meditation. So now, and like we were talking about earlier, there is a wealth of information and knowledge out there in podcasts and YouTubes and different, to listen to motivational and inspirational messages.
Yeah.
So on that note, thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you. I'll see you next time.